Last time I told you. Sitting alone in my room after that call. The silence still felt warm. I said that terrified me. I meant it. But here's what I didn't tell you yet. Right before we hung up, right at the very end, Mason said, "Sweet dreams, pretty boy." And then he was gone, just like that. Casual. Like he hadn't just said that. Like those 3 words hadn't. Rearranged something permanently inside my chest. I sat there in the dark, staring at my screen. For an embarrassingly long time. Pretty boy. He called me pretty boy. And since then, I have not been the same person. Clinically, medically. I think something broke. My entire personality changed permanently. I'm serious. Something chemically irreversible happened to me after that Discord call, because suddenly every part of my day started revolving around him in ways that were honestly a little concerning. Like, for example, I started waking up earlier. Not because I was becoming healthier or more productive. Absolutely not. I just wanted enough time to text Mason before class, which is objectively embarrassing behavior, and the worst part, he always texted back, fast, like suspiciously fast. At first I tried convincing myself he was just naturally friendly, but after the 4th consecutive morning of waking up to messages from him, no, that starts affecting a person psychologically, especially a person like me, because every single notification from Mason felt like a tiny hit of emotional dopamine directly to the bloodstream. Pathetic, dangerous, deeply addictive. Anyway, a few days after the Discord call, I was sitting in my statistics lecture pretending to understand anything happening on the projector, when my phone buzzed quietly against the desk. Now normally I ignored notifications during class, mostly because I already struggled enough academically without adding distractions into the mix. But then I glanced down, and immediately forgot the existence of mathematics entirely. "Mason, this class is killing me," I blinked, then immediately smiled at my desk like an idiot, because, first of all, he texted me first. Again. Second of all, the image of Mason Reyes suffering through a lecture like a normal human being weirdly made him even more attractive to me. Very inconvenient. I typed back carefully. "Maybe if you actually slept instead of bullying me on Discord until 1 a.m. you'd survive." 3 little typing bubbles appeared instantly. And, okay, can we talk about typing bubbles for a second? Because those things are psychologically evil. Like, why is watching someone type so intimate? Why does it feel like standing outside someone's thoughts waiting to be let in? Terrifying concept, honestly. Then Mason replied, "Worth it. See? See what I mean?" This man could not continue speaking to me like this. It was becoming a public health concern. I physically dropped my head onto the desk, trying to hide my smile. Unfortunately, my professor noticed immediately. "Everything all right down there?" "Cool. Awesome. Love that for me." I sat up so fast I almost launched my phone across the room. "Yeah. Sorry." The professor stared for another second before continuing the lecture. Meanwhile, I could physically feel my soul leaving my body from second-hand embarrassment. And somehow, another text from Mason came through right after. "You got caught smiling at your phone, didn't you?" I froze, then slowly looked around the lecture hall like he might somehow be spying on me from the ceiling. Because there was no actual way he guessed that correctly. I typed, "I hate you. Mason." "No, you don't. Actually, evil behavior." Because the worst part was that he was right. Anyway, by this point, texting Mason had fully integrated itself into my daily routine. Morning texts, random memes during class, late-night conversations, game invites, stupid little observations throughout the day. And honestly, it scared me a little how quickly it all started feeling natural. Like Mason had always been there somehow. Which sounds dramatic, but loneliness changes your perception of time. People who make you feel seen start occupying space in your life incredibly fast. And Mason? Mason was everywhere now, in my notifications, my thoughts, my routines. It got bad enough that Noah eventually noticed. "Actually, noticed is generous," he interrogated me like a federal investigator. We were sitting in the dining hall when he suddenly narrowed his eyes at me. "You're smiling at your phone again?" I immediately put my phone face down on the table. I literally wasn't. "Elliot." "What? You have the expression of a Victorian woman reading love letters. I choked on my drink. Because, excuse me? Noah leaned forward dramatically. It's getting serious, isn't it? And okay, here's the thing. Up until that moment, I'd been trying very hard not to think about that question too deeply. Because crushes are manageable. Crushes are fun, temporary, lightweight, containable. This was starting to feel bigger, and honestly that terrified me, so instead of answering Noah properly I mumbled, "I don't know," which apparently told him everything immediately. His expression softened a little. "Oh," he said quietly, "you really like him." I looked down at my untouched food, and after a long pause I admitted, "Yeah, God." Saying it out loud made it feel real. Not just a silly little crush anymore. Something deeper. Something that had quietly rooted itself inside me before I even noticed. And the scary part? I didn't think I wanted to stop it anymore. And apparently, the universe heard me admitting feelings out loud and immediately decided, "Oh, perfect. Let's make Elliot's life worse." Because later that same day, I accidentally found Mason's Instagram. Now before you judge me, I was not stalking him. Okay, technically I was a little bit stalking him, but in my defense he appeared in my recommended accounts, which honestly felt targeted by God specifically. So naturally, I clicked, and immediately regretted it. Because why was this man photogenic? Like, actually unfairly photogenic. Most people look kind of awkward in candid pictures. Not Mason. No, this man looked good accidentally. There were pictures of him, sitting on the hood of somebody's car, smiling at the beach, wearing hoodies that cost more than my monthly will to live. And every single photo somehow made my crush worse. Actually, devastating experience. I was lying face down on my bed, scrolling through his account when Noah texted me. "How's your boyfriend?" I immediately replied, "He's not my boyfriend." Then paused. Then added, "Unfortunately." "Noah, oh, you got it bad, which, rude, accurate, but rude." Anyway, I kept scrolling, and honestly, that's when something weird happened, because underneath all the attractive pictures and comments and likes, I started noticing little things, like how Mason barely posted himself. Most of his photos were sunsets, blurry campus pictures, random coffee cups, dumb memes, and for some reason, that made him feel more real to me. Less perfect college guy, more just Mason. Then I noticed something else, a photo from a few months ago, and in it, Mason looked different, not physically, emotionally. His smile looked tired somehow. Forced. I don't know how to explain it, but when you spend enough time feeling sad yourself, you start recognizing it in other people too. I stared at the picture for a second longer than necessary, and right then, my phone buzzed. I nearly launched it across the room. "Mason." "What are you doing, RN?" Immediate emotional collapse, because why did he always text at the exact moment I was thinking about him? That had to be illegal somehow, I typed back, rotting in bed dramatically. "Mason, relatable." Then another message immediately. "Want to call?" Okay. Now this was new, because usually one of us asked to game first. But this was just calling to talk, no distractions, no excuse, no "we're only here for the game." Just him wanting to hear my voice. And suddenly my heartbeat became everybody's problem. I stared at the message for so long that Mason sent another one. "Unless you're busy." I sat upright instantly. No. Then immediately wanted to die, too eager. Way too eager. I sent another text quickly. Yeah, I can call. Smooth. Very smooth, Elliot. I buried my face in my pillow before opening Discord, and somehow... The second Mason answered. He sounded amused already. "You panic-typed that reply, didn't you?" I gasped dramatically. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You sent no like I was holding your family hostage." "I was trying to communicate enthusiasm." Mason laughed softly. God, that sound was becoming dangerous to my long-term survival. I leaned back against my bed, trying to calm my heartbeat. My heart was doing things that would concern a medical professional. "You panic-typed that reply, didn't you?" Mason asked. "I did not." "You sent no in all caps." I was communicating enthusiasm. You sounded like a hostage. That's because Discord calls are terrifying. Mason laughed again. And there it was. That stupid laugh. Warm, easy, dangerous. I was starting to develop a completely healthy and reasonable emotional dependency on hearing it, which seemed bad. Probably, I wasn't a psychologist. But if a psychologist had been present, I think they would have looked at me, looked at Mason, and immediately started preparing a PowerPoint presentation titled, "Sir, you are in trouble." "So what are you doing?" I asked. "Homework." "Disgusting." Agreed. Silence settled comfortably between us. Comfortably. That was new. Normally, silence felt like a social failure. Like both people had accidentally run out of conversation and were now waiting for death. But with Mason? It felt easy. Then his voice softened. "You seemed stressed earlier." And just like that, my stomach dropped, because there he went again. Noticing things. Always noticing things. I stared harder at the ceiling. Was I that obvious? A little. Fantastic. Love that. Wonderful. Nothing boosts your confidence like discovering the person you're trying to impress can apparently read your emotional state like weather forecasts. I groaned dramatically. My grades are plotting against me. They probably got tired of your personality. Wow. You walked into that one. I walked into nothing. You absolutely did. I hated how quickly he made me laugh. It felt unfair, like some kind of emotional cheat code. The conversation drifted after that. Classes, professors, bad cafeteria food, the ongoing mystery of why college students willingly consumed energy drinks that looked radioactive, then somehow, without me noticing. The conversation got real, the way conversations sometimes do at midnight, when you're tired and honest, and accidentally saying things you normally keep locked behind 7 emotional security systems. I don't know. I stared at the wall. Sometimes I feel like everybody else got instructions for being a person. Mason was quiet. I didn't. Yeah? Yeah. I laughed softly. Good. Why? Because if you had, I smiled, you'd be unbearable. That earned another laugh. God help me. I was becoming addicted. Then Mason said something that hit me directly in the chest. You know you're harder on yourself than anybody else is, right? Silence. Complete silence. Because what kind of attack was that? Nobody was supposed to notice things like that. Especially not him. Especially not when I spent so much energy pretending everything was fine. You don't know that. I do. How? Another pause. Then, because every time something goes wrong, you act like it's proof you're failing at life. Excuse me. Who gave him permission to be observant? I don't remember approving this. I rolled over onto my stomach. That's incredibly rude. That's incredibly true. I liked you better before you started psychoanalyzing me. No, you didn't. The worst part, he sounded completely confident. Like he knew. Like he already knew exactly how much I enjoyed talking to him. Which was impossible. Hopefully. Probably. Maybe. God, I needed help. The truly embarrassing part? Things only got worse after that. Because somehow, Mason became part of my routine, and I don't mean casually, I mean horrifyingly, concerningly, potentially diagnosable. Every morning there was a text. Every night there was a conversation. Every random thing that happened during the day somehow turned into, I should tell Mason, and that realization alone should have alarmed me. Instead, I embraced it like an idiot. 3 weeks later, Noah staged an intervention. Not metaphorically, literally. He walked into my room carrying a notebook, an actual notebook. I immediately didn't trust him. What is that? Evidence. Oh no. Oh yes. Noah. He sat down dramatically, opened the notebook, cleared his throat, then announced, Exhibitor. You made exhibits? You smile at your phone. Everybody smiles at their phone. Not like that. What does that mean? You look like a Victorian widow receiving letters from her husband at war. I stared. What does that even mean? It means you're down catastrophically. Rude. Accurate. But rude. Noah flipped a page. Exhibit B. Please stop. He remembers your coffee order. That isn't weird. You mentioned it once. People remember things, not normal people. I hated this conversation. Deeply. Passionately. Noah continued. Exhibit C. There's more? There is so much more. I covered my face. This is harassment. He notices your moods. He's observant. He notices your punctuation. Silence. I froze. Noah pointed. Look at that face. Stop. That's the face of a man who knows I'm right. The worst part. He was. Because 3 days earlier I'd gotten a text from Mason. Out of nowhere. No context. No warning. Just, rough day? I had stared at the message for a full minute, then replied, What? Mason, you've stopped using periods. I nearly dropped my phone, because apparently this man had memorized my texting habits, which felt insane, romantic, but mostly insane. Exhibit D. There's an Exhibit D? He knows when you skip lunch, I groaned. Noah pointed again. Exactly. No. Exactly. No. Elliot, what? That man is courting you. People don't court people anymore. Then explain why he's monitoring your nutritional intake. I opened my mouth, then closed it, because unfortunately, I didn't actually have an answer, and somewhere deep down, that terrified me, because if Noah was right, then I had a problem, a very attractive problem, with nice eyes and a dangerous laugh, and suddenly the idea of him not liking me back sounded significantly worse than rejection, because now I had hope. And hope was terrifying. The problem with hope is that once it shows up, it starts redecorating. Suddenly every interaction means something. Every text becomes evidence. Every smile becomes suspicious. Every compliment gets placed under forensic investigation. And unfortunately, Mason kept generating evidence. One Tuesday morning I woke up to a text, which had become alarmingly normal. Not healthy, not normal, but normal for me. The message simply read, Don't forget your presentation today. I sat up so fast I almost head-butted my headboard, because I'd forgotten about my presentation, completely, entirely, gone, deleted from my brain. Meanwhile, Mason apparently remembered, which raised several questions, mainly. Why? Why was he keeping track of my academic schedule? Did he have a spreadsheet? Was there a database? Should I be afraid? I typed. How do you know about that? The typing bubble appeared immediately. Immediately. Which meant one of two things. A, coincidence. Or, B, Mason Reyes was somehow always holding his phone. You mentioned it last week. I stared. Last week. I couldn't remember what I ate yesterday. Meanwhile, this man was out here storing information about me like he was preparing for an exam. That's weird. His reply came back instantly. You're welcome. I smiled before I could stop myself, then immediately frowned, because smiling at my phone at 7 in the morning felt like the first warning sign in a documentary. By lunchtime, things got worse, naturally, because life hated me. I was sitting outside with a sandwich, trying to review notes, trying being the important word, when a shadow appeared beside me. I looked up and immediately forgot what I was reading. Mason, of course, because apparently peace was no longer an option. Hey. He looked down at my lunch, then at me, then back at my lunch. You're actually eating, I narrowed my eyes. Excuse me? You skipped lunch yesterday. Silence. Complete silence. How do you know that? Mason blinked. Like that wasn't the most alarming statement ever made. You told me. No, I didn't. You texted me at 6. Okay? You were hungry, okay? You said you forgot to eat. Oh. Right. The problem wasn't that he knew. The problem was that he remembered. Because apparently my life wasn't stressful enough without him storing random facts about me. You remember weird things, he smiled. You say that like it's a bad thing. It depends on what? How many other terrifying facts you're collecting? To my horror, he laughed, then sat beside me, close. Very close. Unnecessarily close, not touching, just close. The kind of close that makes you aware of absolutely everything. His shoulder, his voice, the fact that he smelled unfairly good, My brain immediately stopped functioning. Your presentation go okay? There he went again. Checking on things, remembering things, caring about things. Yeah. You sound surprised. I survived. That's not the same thing. It's close. Not really. I looked at him. He was smiling. And suddenly, for one terrifying second, everything felt easy. Then my heart remembered it had a job, and immediately resumed panicking. That night Noah called, again, which was becoming concerning. Emergency meeting. No. Emergency meeting? Noah. Emergency meeting. 5 minutes later, he was in my room, holding the notebook. Again. I hated the notebook. The notebook represented my downfall. Exhibit E. You skipped D. No, I didn't. You absolutely did. Focus. He flipped the notebook open. Exhibit E. Mason remembered a presentation you mentioned once. People remember things. He remembered the date. Coincidence. He checked on you afterward. Friendship. He monitors your nutritional intake. Friendship. He notices your punctuation. Friendship. He texts you every morning. Friendship. He sits next to you every chance he gets. Friendship. He smiles differently at you. I froze. What? Noah pointed aggressively. What? That face. What face? The face that says you know I'm right? I threw a pillow at him. Ow. Good. You assault me every time I tell the truth. That's because you're annoying. You misspelled handsome. I hated him. The truly horrible part? The more Noah talked, the harder it became to ignore. Because once you start looking for something, you notice it everywhere. Like the fact that Mason always saved me a seat. Always. Without fail. Or the fact that he somehow knew when I was having a bad day. Or the fact that whenever we were in groups, his attention always drifted back to me. Which sounds romantic, and it was. Unfortunately. A few days later, the gaming club announced a movie night. Immediately I knew two things. 1. I wanted to go. 2. I absolutely should not go, because spending 3 hours in a dark room beside the person you're secretly in love with seemed medically irresponsible. Naturally, I spent the next 40 minutes debating it. Then my phone buzzed. Mason, you coming Friday? I stared, because here's the thing. Mason never texted, "Are you coming?" He always texted, "You coming?" Like my attendance was assumed. Like me being there mattered, which was a dangerous thing for an anxious person to notice. I typed. Probably. The reply arrived almost instantly. Liar. I sat upright. What? You only say probably when you're nervous. Excuse me? What? I stared at the message, then stared harder, as if new information might appear. Because that wasn't normal. Normal people don't learn your vocabulary patterns. Normal people don't know which words you use when you're anxious. Normal people don't immediately call you out for it. My pulse sped up. Okay, stalker. The typing bubble appeared. Says the guy who knows my class schedule. The worst part? He had a point. I hated when he had points. A few seconds later, another message arrived. I'll save you a seat. And just like that, I was doomed. Completely. Absolutely. Hopelessly doomed. Because normal people don't save seats. People with crushes save seats. And unfortunately, I was starting to suspect Noah wasn't the only one collecting evidence anymore. The worst thing about Friday was that I had too much time to think. And thinking had never once improved my situation. Not a single time. In my entire life. Thinking was basically anxiety's favorite hobby. By 6 o'clock, I'd changed outfits 4 times. 4. Not because I cared. Obviously, I cared. A lot. The problem was figuring out how much effort looked like no effort. Because apparently that's a thing people do. Too much effort? Suspicious. Too little effort? Also suspicious. At one point, I was staring into the mirror when Noah called. The second I answered, he said, "You're getting ready." I froze. No. You're lying. I'm not. How many outfit changes? Silence. Elliot. 3. Ha ha ha. It was 4. The laughter got worse. I hate you. No. Noah sounded delighted. You are deeply, catastrophically, embarrassingly in love.
I am not.
You changed clothes 4 times for movie night. It's called hygiene. That's not what hygiene means. Unfortunately, he had a point. Again, I hated when people had points. By the time I arrived at the student center, I was already regretting everything. The room was crowded, people everywhere. Blankets, beanbags, snacks, the faint smell of microwave popcorn and poor decisions. My natural habitat. I was halfway through planning my escape route when somebody called my name. I looked up and immediately forgot how breathing worked. Mason, standing near the back, smiling, not a polite smile. Not the kind people give everyone. The kind that appeared the moment he saw me, like he'd been looking for me, which was obviously ridiculous, probably, hopefully, dangerously. There you are. I would like to formally report that sentence, because it did things to me. Terrible things. The kind of things that make a person stare at a wall later and question every life choice they've ever made. Hi. Amazing. Incredible. A masterclass in conversation. Mason's smile widened. Then he lifted a hand and pointed beside him. I saved you a seat. There it was. The text, the seat, the evidence. The increasingly concerning mountain of evidence. My brain immediately opened Noah's notebook. Exhibit F. He saved a seat. I sat down before my legs forgot how. Unfortunately, that turned out to be another mistake, because the seat was close, very close. Not touching, just close enough to be psychologically devastating. The movie started. I absorbed approximately 8% of the plot. Maybe less. Because every functioning brain cell was occupied by the fact that Mason was right there. Close enough that I could hear him laugh. Close enough that our shoulders occasionally brushed. Close enough that my survival instincts filed a formal complaint. Halfway through the movie, someone threw popcorn, then someone threw more popcorn, then complete anarchy broke out. As expected, gaming club events always followed the same pattern. 1. Normal. 2. Slightly chaotic. 3. Complete societal collapse. I was watching somebody get attacked with a blanket when Mason leaned closer. You cold? I blinked. What? You keep pulling your sleeves over your hands. Silence, because that wasn't a normal observation. That wasn't even a reasonable observation. That meant he was watching me, not in a creepy way, in the much more dangerous way, the caring way. Oh. I looked down. Apparently I was. I hadn't noticed. You always do that when you're cold. Excuse me? Always, always. How many times had he noticed that? How long had this man been observing me? My heart immediately attempted escape. I'm okay. Mason stared, then slowly reached behind him and pulled out a hoodie. A hoodie. An entire hoodie. I brought this. What? You forgot yours last week? I think my soul left my body. Because surely not. Surely there was an explanation. A logical one. A reasonable one. One that didn't immediately support Noah's entire case. You brought an extra hoodie. Yeah. For me. Yeah. Why? Mason looked genuinely confused. Because you'd be cold. Like that answered anything. Like that was a normal sentence. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear Noah kicking down a door. The man would never recover from this information. Neither would I. I took the hoodie. Our fingers brushed. Tiny contact. Barely a second. And somehow, that was worse. Far worse. Because suddenly I was aware of everything. The warmth, the closeness. The way Mason looked at me. The fact that he seemed completely unaware he was destroying my life. Or maybe, terrifyingly, he was aware. The thought stayed with me for the rest of the movie, and afterward, and during the walk back to my dorm, and later that night, when my phone buzzed. Mason, of course. Did you get home safe? I stared at the message, then laughed, softly, because there it was again. That feeling, the dangerous one. The one that kept growing every time he remembered something, every time he checked on me, every time he paid attention. I typed, "Yes, Mom." The typing bubble appeared instantly. "Go to sleep, Elliot. Make me." A few seconds passed. Then "Don't tempt me. I sat upright so fast I nearly launched my phone across the room. Because, excuse me? What did that mean? What exactly did that mean? My heart was now operating entirely outside legal limits. Another text appeared. Presentation tomorrow, don't stay up until 3 a.m. again. And just like that, he turned back into himself, thoughtful, attentive, dangerously sweet. The kind of person who remembered things. The kind of person who made hope feel possible, which should have made me happy. Instead, it terrified me, because for the first time, I wasn't scared that Mason didn't like me. I was scared that he might. The problem with discovering someone might like you back is that suddenly everything becomes terrifying. Before, rejection was theoretical. Now, hope had entered the chat, and hope was dangerous. Hope made you imagine things, future things, happy things, things that could be taken away, which meant I spent the next week doing what any emotionally mature adult would do, avoiding the problem completely. Unfortunately, Mason noticed immediately, because apparently he had been cursed with observational abilities. You're weird today. I nearly inhaled my coffee. What? Weird. I'm always weird. Different weird. Different weird. That was somehow worse. We were sitting outside the library, a normal situation. A completely harmless situation. Except for the fact that Mason was sitting beside me, which automatically made everything dangerous. I'm not weird. You took 27 minutes to reply to my text. Silence. I looked away. Mason narrowed his eyes. You counted? His smile was immediate. Aha! The traitor. The absolute traitor. Why were you counting? I demanded. Why were you taking 27 minutes? Neither of us answered, which somehow felt like losing. Again. Then Mason bumped his shoulder lightly against mine. Tiny contact. Barely anything. My entire nervous system filed a complaint. You're overthinking. The horrifying part. He wasn't asking, he knew. Maybe. Elliot. What? His voice softened. You know you can talk to me, right? And just like that, all the teasing disappeared. That's what Mason did. 1 second he was making fun of me. The next, he was looking at me like I mattered. It was incredibly unfair. I stared at the ground, because looking at him felt dangerous, more dangerous than usual. Yeah, the word came out quiet, but Mason smiled anyway, like it was enough. And somehow, that felt even worse. Because who smiles like that over one word? People with feelings. That's who. And unfortunately, I was starting to suspect Noah wasn't completely insane. The realization hit full force 2 days later, when I met Ava. Correction. When Ava met me. Because there is a difference. I arrived at the cafe 5 minutes late. Immediately, a girl at the table spotted me, then looked at Mason, then back at me, then smiled. Oh! I froze. I hated oh. Nothing good had ever followed oh. What? Her smile widened. Oh, wow. What? Oh, wow. Mason, I pointed. Control your friend. Mason immediately covered his face, which was a terrible sign. An absolutely terrible sign, because people only cover their faces when disaster is approaching. Ava? What? Don't. I haven't even started. The table exploded. Everybody laughed. Everybody except me. Because I was busy sensing danger. The kind of danger prey animals sense. Finally. I looked toward the voice. A guy was grinning. Finally what? Another smile. Another terrible smile. Then Ava leaned forward. Oh my God. What? You genuinely don't know. My stomach dropped. No what? What? Somebody explain something. Ava looked at Mason. Mason looked ready to launch himself into traffic. Then she looked back at me and delivered the sentence that nearly killed me. Mason talks about you constantly. Complete system failure. Everything stopped. The cafe, the conversation, my brain, everything. What? The entire table nodded. Like this was common knowledge, like they'd all attended meetings, like there had been minutes. PowerPoint presentations, charts, quarterly Elliot updates. Mason. Ava pointed dramatically. Mason this. Elliot that. Elliot said this. Elliot likes that. Elliot's professor is annoying. Elliot has anxiety. Elliot skipped lunch. Elliot needs sleep. I slowly turned toward him. Mason. His face was completely red, completely. The audience would lose their minds right here, because for the first time, Mason wasn't calm. Mason wasn't composed. Mason wasn't in control. He looked caught, and somehow that was the most convincing thing yet. Ava leaned closer. "Oh, thank God." "What?" "I was worried you were stupid." The table went silent. "I'm sorry. Because if you didn't know after all this," she pointed dramatically, "then I would have had terrible news for you." Mason groaned. The table lost it. Meanwhile, I was fighting for my life, because suddenly Noah's notebook was looking alarmingly accurate, and for the first time, I couldn't find a single explanation that sounded convincing. Not one. The problem with Ava was that she clearly enjoyed violence. Not physical violence. Emotional violence. The kind that leaves you staring at a ceiling at 3 a.m. Case in point, the second Mason left to grab drinks. She turned toward me, smiled, and said, "So." I immediately didn't like the tone of that. So? So, Ava? Elliot, I feel threatened. You should. At least she was honest. The table laughed. Traitors. Every single one of them. Ava leaned forward. "Can I ask you something?" "No." "You don't even know what it is." "No." "Do you like him?" I nearly inhaled my own tongue. The table erupted, absolutely erupted. People laughing, someone choking, somebody actually slapped the table. Meanwhile, I was experiencing cardiac failure. Ava. What? You can't ask people that. Why not? Because it's insane. No. She pointed toward where Mason was waiting for drinks. This is insane. I followed her finger, immediately regretted it, because Mason was looking over, at me. Not the table, not the room. Me, the second our eyes met. He smiled, and suddenly I forgot what human speech was. Oh my God. Ava looked delighted. Oh my God, you do. I do not. You absolutely do. The worst part, I sounded guilty. Very guilty. Criminally guilty. Ava looked ready to celebrate. Thank God. What? I was worried I'd have to hit both of you with a chair. The table exploded again. I covered my face. Because, honestly, fair. Mason returned a minute later, immediately suspicious. Why is everybody laughing? Nobody answered. Because apparently everyone wanted to live. Smart. Very smart. Unfortunately, the damage was already done. Because for the rest of the afternoon, I kept noticing things. Little things. The way Mason always made room for me in conversations. The way his attention drifted back to me. The way he automatically looked for my reaction whenever something funny happened. The way he remembered details. The way he listened, really listened. Not waiting for his turn to speak, actually listening. And once I noticed it, I couldn't stop noticing it. Which was bad, very bad, because hope had now evolved. Hope was no longer a harmless possibility. Hope was becoming a real thing, and real things could hurt. A lot. Unfortunately, my brain found a new problem almost immediately, because Ava was gorgeous. Offensively gorgeous. The kind of person who made you reconsider every life decision. And since anxiety is basically a part-time job, my brain immediately started suffering. Maybe they dated. Maybe they used to like each other. Maybe... Stop. I blinked. What? Mason was looking at me, amused, concerned, far too observant. You've got the face. The face? The overthinking face. Excuse me? The overthinking face? I had a face? How long had I had a face? Why did he know about the face? This felt like a privacy violation. What are you overthinking? Nothing. Elliot. Nothing. His eyes narrowed, dangerously. Then, is it Ava? Complete silence. The worst silence, because his expression immediately changed. Not upset, not annoyed, just incredibly amused. Oh my God. What? You thought Ava and I dated? My soul left my body immediately, without notice, without warning, without filing paperwork. I didn't. You did. I didn't. You absolutely did. I hated him so much for approximately 3 seconds, because then he laughed. And unfortunately, his laugh remained my greatest weakness. Ava's basically my sister. Pause. Then. Besides, My entire body froze. Besides what? You can't start a sentence with besides. That's illegal. His eyes met mine for just a second. Something shifted. Something warm. Something terrifying. Then he smiled and looked away. Never mind. Never mind? Never mind? Sir, I am asking respectfully, return to the crime scene immediately. Finish the sentence. You cannot deploy emotional warfare and then leave. That should have been illegal. Unfortunately, the sentence followed me home, and into the next day, and the next, and the next, because every time I thought about it, my stomach did weird things. Besides what? I was still trying to figure it out when the party happened, which, in hindsight, was the beginning of the end. Not for us. For my sanity. The party was crowded, loud, exactly the kind of environment that made me want to dissolve into dust. Normally I would have skipped it, but Mason was going, and unfortunately, that was enough. The first hour wasn't terrible, people talking, music, games, the occasional reminder that extroverts are terrifying. Then I went looking for water and accidentally overheard a conversation. One sentence, just one. That's all it took, because anxiety doesn't need evidence, it needs opportunity. Someone laughed. Then another voice said, honestly, Mason's basically babysitting him. The world stopped, completely. Babysitting, the word hit harder than it should have. Because the truth is, part of me had always been afraid of that. Afraid that everyone else saw what I saw. The awkwardness, the anxiety, the constant overthinking. The fact that loving me seemed like a lot of work. Suddenly every memory looked different. Every text, every call, every kindness. What if Noah had been wrong? What if Ava had been wrong? What if I had been wrong? What if Mason didn't like me? What if he just felt responsible for me? The spiral hit instantly. Fast, violent, familiar. And for the first time in weeks, hope disappeared, leaving fear behind. So I left, not because I wanted to, because I couldn't breathe. And breathing felt important. I made it outside, down the sidewalk, around the corner, then sat down on the curb, head in my hands, trying very hard not to fall apart, trying very hard not to be the person everyone always seemed to have to take care of, trying very hard not to cry over something that might not even be true. And honestly, I would have stayed there, alone, if I hadn't heard footsteps. Then a voice, a familiar voice, my favorite voice, terrible timing. There you are. And somehow, that hurt even more. There you are. I looked up, and immediately wished I hadn't. Because Mason looked worried, actually worried, not mildly concerned, not casually checking in, worried, like he'd been looking for me, like he'd noticed I was gone, which somehow made everything worse. What happened? Nothing. The lie came automatically, reflexive, familiar. Mason didn't buy it for a second. Elliot. Nothing. Elliot. What? His voice wasn't sharp, wasn't angry, just tired, like he was exhausted from watching me do this to myself. And somehow, that hurt, because he knew. Of course he knew. He always knew. You heard something. I looked away. Silence. Mason exhaled slowly, then sat down beside me. Not across from me, beside me. Close enough that our shoulders almost touched, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. And somehow, that made everything harder. Because I wanted him there. That was the problem. I wanted him there so much it scared me. What did you hear? I laughed, a short, miserable laugh. You don't have to do this. Do what? This. I gestured vaguely. Take care of me. The silence that followed was immediate, heavy, and when I finally looked up, Mason was staring, not confused, not amused, just completely stunned. Then, is that what this is? I swallowed, because suddenly, I wasn't sure, and that terrified me. I don't know. The words came out small, smaller than I intended. I looked away again, because saying it out loud felt impossible, but Mason waited, patient, steady, the way he always was, and eventually, the words slipped out. What if everyone was right? His brow furrowed. About what? I laughed again, humorless this time. What if you're just babysitting me? Silence, complete silence. Then, what? I immediately regretted existing because hearing it out loud sounded ridiculous, embarrassing, pathetic. But it was too late now. The words were already there, and I couldn't take them back. I heard someone talking. Mason stared, then rubbed a hand over his face. Slowly, like he was trying very hard not to lose patience with the entire universe. Of course you did. What? Elliot. He looked at me, really looked at me, and suddenly, I couldn't look away. Do you know what the problem is? There's more than one. That actually earned the tiniest smile. Then it disappeared. You always assume the worst. The words landed immediately, because they were true. Painfully true. If something could mean two things, I always picked the bad one. Every time. Like my brain was contractually obligated. You expect people to leave. Silence. You expect people to get tired of you. More silence. You expect people to realize you're too much work. Ouch. Because that one hit directly. Straight through every defense, every joke, every excuse, every wall. And the worst part, I couldn't even argue, because he was right. Again. God. I hated when he was right. Mason looked away briefly, then back at me, and his voice softened. So you start believing it before it happens. The words settled between us, and suddenly, I felt seen, not observed, seen, like he'd somehow looked past all the nonsense, past the anxiety, past the self-deprecating jokes, past the panic, and found me anyway. It was terrifying, because nobody had ever done that before. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Mason laughed quietly, the soft kind, the dangerous kind, and shook his head. You really think I'm babysitting you? I stared at the sidewalk, which was apparently answer enough, because he laughed again. Not mocking, not mean, just completely disbelieving. Then he said, Elliot, what? If I was babysitting you. He shifted slightly closer. My heart immediately forgot how to function. If I didn't care about you. Closer. If you were just some responsibility. Closer. And now breathing was becoming difficult. I wouldn't spend this much time thinking about you. Everything stopped. The street, the music from the party, the wind, everything. What? The word barely came out. Mason smiled, small, nervous, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked scared too, actually scared, which somehow meant more than anything else. What do you think Ava was trying to tell you? My brain crashed, immediately, completely, blue screen, system failure, permanent damage. You. Yeah. You like me? The smile that appeared on his face nearly killed me. Yeah, just like that. Simple. Certain. Like there had never been any doubt. Like he'd known for a long time. Meanwhile, I was barely holding reality together, because I had spent months preparing for ejection. Months. I had contingency plans, backup plans, emergency evacuation procedures. I did not have a plan for this. I think I'm having a medical event. Mason laughed. There it was again. That stupid laugh. The one that ruined my life. The one I'd fallen in love with long before I realized it. Then his expression softened, and suddenly everything felt quiet. Just us. No party. No anxiety. No noise. Just us. I really like you, Elliot. The words hit harder than I expected, because they weren't dramatic. They weren't perfect. They were just honest. And somehow, honesty felt bigger than anything else. I swallowed, because my chest hurt. In the best possible way. I really like you, too. Mason smiled. Relief. Actual relief, like he'd been hoping. Like he'd been waiting, which was a dangerous thought. Then he took my hand. Slowly, carefully, giving me every opportunity to pull away. I didn't. Not even a little. His thumb brushed against mine. Tiny movement, tiny contact, massive consequences. And suddenly, all I could think about was how easy this felt. How right, how stupid we'd both been. Then Mason looked at me, really looked at me, and quietly said, Tell me to stop. I blinked. What? His voice dropped lower, gentler. Tell me to stop. My pulse hammered, because suddenly I understood every word, every possibility, every inch of distance between us. And the terrifying thing was, he meant it, If I said stop, he would, immediately, no questions, no pressure, no guilt, just stop. The choice was entirely mine, and for a second I couldn't speak. Because the problem wasn't that I wanted him to stop. The problem was that I couldn't remember ever wanting anything less. My heart was trying to escape. My brain had completely given up. And all I could think was, oh, this is what all those late-night calls were leading to. This is what every text meant. Every saved seat. Every remembered detail. Every did you get home safe. Every single thing. I looked at him, and finally whispered, I don't want you to stop. The look on his face was immediate, soft, warm, like I'd just handed him something precious. Then he leaned in, slowly, giving me one last chance. I closed the distance first, and kissed him, soft, tentative. Perfect, not fireworks, not explosions, just warmth, relief, like finding the place you were supposed to be all along. When we pulled apart, neither of us spoke immediately. Then I laughed. Because honestly, what else was I supposed to do? What? Mason asked. I shook my head. I spent months panicking over this. His smile widened. You could have said something. You could have too. Fair. Infuriating, but fair. I squeezed his hand, then quietly admitted, I think I've been falling in love with you for a while. The expression on his face softened instantly. Good. Good? Yeah. He smiled. Because apparently he enjoyed destroying me emotionally. I've been falling in love with you too. And just like that, everything changed. For most of my life, I thought love meant becoming easier to love. Less awkward. Less anxious. Less me. But Mason taught me something different. The right person doesn't wait for you to become somebody else. They learn your coffee order. They notice when you skip lunch. They remember your presentation. They bring an extra hoodie. They save you a seat. They text to make sure you got home safe. And when you panic, they stay. Maybe that was what love really was. Not somebody fixing you, not somebody rescuing you, just somebody choosing you. Again, and again, and again. No matter how loudly your anxiety insists they won't. And honestly, that might have been the best thing anybody ever gave me, the end.
Okay, I need to know. Was Noah right from the beginning? Or was Elliot genuinely the last person on Earth to realize Mason was completely in love with him? Let me know down in the comments because I am 100% reading them. And while you're there, tell me your favorite moment from the story. Was it Noah's evidence notebook? The extra hoodie? Ava exposing Mason in front of everyone? Or the final confession? I want to know. And if this story made you smile, made you laugh, or had you kicking your feet at 2 a.m., don't forget to leave a like. It really helps the channel and lets me know you want more stories like this. And if you're new here, and you enjoy emotional BL stories, slow burn romance, green flag love interests, chaotic best friends, and characters who desperately need glasses because they can't see when someone likes them, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story. Thank you for spending your time with me today. Take care of yourself. Get some sleep. Drink some water. And unlike Elliot, try not to overthink every text message. I'll see you in the next story.